On August 24th, in the year 79 AD, the city of Pompeii was swallowed by a fate as sudden as it was overwhelming, as if time itself had decided to stretch out its hand and freeze an entire civilization in the midst of its ordinary daily routine. The eruption of Mount Vesuvius not only destroyed the city but paradoxically preserved it as a reliquary of Roman everyday life, a silent testimony that would cross centuries to tell a unique story, that of a people caught off guard by the inexorable power of nature at the very moment they believed themselves masters of their own destiny. The catastrophe that ended the lives of thousands revealed, in a cruel yet sublime way, how vulnerable humanity is when confronted with forces that transcend its understanding and control. Pompeii, before its tragic end, was a vibrant urban center, with political, economic, and cultural life intensely intertwined. It was a prosperous city, with paved streets, markets, theaters, bathhouses, and luxurious residences decorated with frescoes and mosaics. Within it lay a sense of permanence, as if that social structure, molded in the Roman style, could last indefinitely. Daily life pulsed in the forums, in the taverns, in the public baths, in gatherings at the amphitheaters, and even in the brothels, which operated naturally within the logic of the time. The inhabitants of Pompeii lived under the Mediterranean sun as if they were eternal, and perhaps therein lay the bitterest irony, the illusion of eternity that would be brutally shattered in just a few hours of fire, ash, and toxic gases. Vesuvius, silent for centuries, was the great protagonist of this drama. Many inhabitants of Pompeii were unaware that they lived at its margins, believing it to be merely a dormant mountain. When the first signs of the eruption began, historical accounts describe a mixture of astonishment and disbelief. The sky darkened in broad daylight. Stones and ash rained down upon rooftops, and columns of fire rose into the heavens in a spectacle as terrifying as it was hypnotic. Panic overtook the streets, but for many it was already too late. In Tyre, families tried to flee. Others sought shelter in their homes, trusting in the strength of their buildings. No strategy, however, was enough against the fury of the volcano. The rain of ash and the pyroclastic surge that followed buried Pompeii within hours. Bodies were preserved in the exact positions in which they succumbed, some embraced, others in prayer, many in desperate attempts to flee. This eternal stillness of the inhabitants gave the city the aura of a living cemetery, a faithful portrait of life abruptly interrupted. Centuries later, when the first excavations revealed these vestiges, the modern world was astonished by the almost supernatural sensation of witnessing the past without mediation. It was like opening a window into ancient Rome and seeing not only its monuments, but its intimacy, the gestures, the fears, the pleasures, and the desires of people who never imagined they would become eternal. The preservation of Pompeii invites us to reflect on the fragility of human life in the face of the unpredictable. If Rome represented greatness, power, and order, Pompeii showed, in contrast, the vulnerability hidden behind every human project of domination. It was as if Vesuvius had revealed, with its eruption, the shadowy side of civilization. No matter how advanced the techniques, no matter how organized the cities, it only takes an instant for everything to turn to dust. In this sense, Pompeii is more than a historical episode. It is a universal symbol of the precariousness of existence. But there is another, even more fascinating aspect. By being destroyed, the city was also saved from the erosion of time. While so many other Roman cities were modified, rebuilt, or completely disappeared, Pompeii remained as an intact capsule, allowing archaeologists and historians to reconstruct with astonishing detail the daily lives of its inhabitants. Carbonized. Loaves of bread were found still in ovens, sealed wine bottles, vibrant wall paintings, inscriptions on the walls with political, romantic, or obscene messages, revealing a common life full of contradictions like any human society. In this sense, Pompeii is a mirror reflecting not only the Romans, but humanity itself. This freezing in time carries a powerful symbolic weight. It is as if the tragedy had transformed the city into a silent oracle, speaking to us about the impermanence of all that we consider solid. The same can be said of individual life. We work, plan, build, love, and desire, but as in Pompeii, everything can be interrupted in the blink of an eye. The catastrophe of 79 AD reminds us that life does not belong entirely to us, that fate can intervene without warning, and that true wisdom may lie in living each moment with awareness of both its preciousness and its vulnerability. It is also interesting to note how Pompeii became, in the collective imagination, a place of both fascination and terror, not only for the spectacle of destruction, but for the way the dead were preserved. In observing the casts of bodies fossilized by the ash, we have the impression that they still gaze at us, as if they were there not only to witness their own tragedy, but to remind us of ours. There is an almost ritual dimension in this encounter with Pompeii's dead, as if each visitor were participating in a silent liturgy before the altar of history. The silence that envelops those who walk among the ruins is not only respect, it is the intuition that there lies a lesson engraved by nature itself. From a psychological perspective, Pompeii confronts us with the archetype of sudden catastrophe, which Jung would identify as a manifestation of the collective unconscious in its destructive face. The eruption symbolizes that which bursts forth without control, the primordial chaos underlying the apparent order of life. This archetype awakens both fear and fascination because it forces us to face the uncomfortable truth. We are not masters of the world. We are passengers on a land that can, at any moment, remind us of its sovereignty. Pompeii thus becomes a modern myth, the narrative of a downfall that echoes in every civilization that deems itself indestructible. Culturally, the rediscovery of Pompeii in the 18th century had a profound impact on European art and thought. The excavations reignited interest in the classical world and inspired artistic movements such as neoclassicism. Writers, painters, and philosophers were moved by the vision of a city interrupted in full bloom, and this clash between beauty and death became a recurring theme. The image of Pompeii echoed as a metaphor for human vanity and the fatality that looms over all cultures. In the same way, even today its story is evoked to symbolize the decay or collapse of civilizations that believe themselves eternal. If we transport this reflection to modern times, we will see that Pompeii is an unsettling mirror for our own societies. We live in a world filled with technologies, scientific achievements, and global political structures that seem to give us a sense of security and control. But are we not, like the Pompeians, distracted in our banquets and spectacles, unaware of the volcano that may awaken at any moment? The disaster of Pompeii is also a parable about human arrogance, about the illusion that tomorrow will be merely a continuation of today. There are no guarantees. What happened to them can happen to us, in other ways, on other scales. The day Pompeii was frozen in time is not merely a historical episode, it is an existential metaphor. It is the reminder that while we build our cities, our empires, and our personal lives, we must remain aware of the fragility of it all. Perhaps this is the reason why the city continues to fascinate us, because when we look at its ruins, we do not see only the Romans of 2,000 years ago, but also the reflection of our own condition. And thus Pompeii remains half alive and half dead, like a petrified oracle. It speaks of the past, but whispers to the future. It teaches that beauty and destruction walk side by side, that life is both banquet and ash, and that time, that relentless master, may at any moment decide to freeze us too in the midst of the ordinariness of our days.